Okay, so I want to show you Arabelle, who she just woke up from a nap and she wants to be fed, but it's not dinner time. So this is my baby. She is my youngest. Her name is Arabelle, and she's in a bad mood right now, but she's my baby. She's look at that face. Don't look at that face. Come on, you know you like to be center stage. She does. She likes to be center stage. She likes a lot of attention, and it's on her terms though. But actually, she just loves attention. But she is a lap cat. She's in my lap, so she may stay here. She may not. Belly. Okay, so I am going to review what I've been talking about all year, the book I've been talking about all year. Oh, I got a cat hair in my eye. It is Lilith by Nikki Marmery. And I hope I'm pronouncing the name right. I think I am. I want you to see the cover, and I know it's backward on here. I'm sorry, but I can't do anything about the camera. Oh my goodness. She is so wiggle wormy. Do you want to go down? Okay, so this is my favorite book of the year. This is my favorite book of the year of 2024. Now, of course, it was published earlier. I think it was a couple years ago. She has a Rossetti poem in the beginning. It's such a good book. She has a quote from Genesis. So this is fiction, but it's literary fiction. It's in the same vein as like Circe and a lot of the other retellings of mythology that people are doing that's actually based on a legend. It is the legend. It's just a modern retelling of it. So I love that. I love that so much. And there's so many good things I could say about this book, but I really want to stress the fact that the author really did a research on this. She really did a good job incorporating the mythologies of really all the old world religions. When we think of ancient history, when we think of Mesopotamia, we think of the Sumerian mythologies, or mythology religion. We think of Babylon, we think of the Akkadians, that succession of cultures that preceded each other. I hope I'm saying that right. I'm not a historian, but it is something that I do find intriguing, like certain time periods in history and the era in which she's pulling a lot of the mythology from that she's dealing with in this book is kind of complex because we don't have a lot of solid hardcore text. Even when you're looking much later at like the Coptic manuscripts, like the Gnostic Gospels, the Dead Sea Scrolls, they were just found, you know, smattered throughout, what was it, North Africa, just in fragments, just fragments. And we know that in, was it 324 AD? Was that the Council of Nicaea, or was that the sacking of, anyway, the sacking of the Library of Alexandria, destroying, and the murder, assassination of Hypatia and all the other scholars and a lot of the other groups of people that were targeted, such as the Jews in Alexandria at the time. We know that a lot of that information is just lost. A lot of their literature, their cultural beliefs, their social mores, we know some of it, but going back to Egypt, we have more intact there. But she does a good job of wrapping all this world up into this book. And she wraps it up in a way that it's very believable. Even though this is a fantastical tale, there are elements where you're like, I can see that. Now, I would also put this as like magical realism, because I think when you retell these myths about women that we just don't know a lot about, because we are missing pieces of history, I think that you have to expand on it in a way that works for the modern narrative, for readers today. And she does it in a way that's not new agey, but if you're into women's spirituality, you'll appreciate it. So I don't want people to think that this is just some subset of the new age genre. No, this is actually literature. This is contemporary literature. And I appreciate that so much. I appreciate the magical realism. I appreciate the fantastical elements. She pulled it all together like really good. I mean, it's tight. It's in there. It's a really good retelling of a lot of these mythologies. The way she blended them fits. It works because it's probably quite similar with working with an Anna and how the legends of the Lilith or the Lilitu goes into Sumerian civilization as much as from the Akkadians to the Jews. You see it in you know, what is it, the Torah and Genesis, the part, and I think a lot of this is apocryphal too. The part where they mention Lilith or the Lilitu, and there's also some people that will say that the Morgan's in there as well. I think that's Joshua something, but I'm not a Bible scholar. I've just read blurbs here and there and a lot of academic books regarding religion and philosophy, and I find it interesting that there are elements of these female characters sometimes presented by modern day scholars in ways that maybe witches or New Agers, don't get me started on the New Age movement, New Agers or feminists may not jive with, and then sometimes they do jive with it. And there's a lot of disagreement coming from people who have a bent on whether Lilith was actually one goddess or a type of theriomorphic being, chimera, if you will. Also, was she a spirit? Was she mother of demons? Was she the first wife of Adam? And that comes from more of the Apocrypha stuff, not so much Christianity as far as the Lilith myth. They've kind of grabbed onto that, but again, hey, I went to Catholic school, and it was right after, you know, with all the Dead Sea Scrolls and stuff. I was in school in the 90s. That shows my age, high school, and early 90s. And a lot of this stuff was still being kind of not accepted or sort of accepted. It was in that liminal space where gray area, well, is it evil? Is it not evil? Is it just, you know, because Gnostic scriptures, Sophia is in there. What is it? Perfect Mind, Thunder Perfect Mind, that one piece or fragment of the scriptures that talks about the divine feminine. And you could also tie that into Shekinah, and I have a book I'm going to show you on Shekinah in a minute, which is the female aspect of God, or God's Yahweh, Jehovah, whatever you want to call him, his wife. And this would be Jewish mysticism, Jewish mythology, Judaism. And again, that's something that you really would have to talk to somebody who's a scholar in that. But just someone who, I don't have a master's in philosophy and religious studies, but it's something that I kind of dig when people bring it all together. And she does a really good job. I can't sit here and go on and on about that because there's so much in my head right now, like studying things like grimoires and Goetias and stuff. That's just my thing. This is the origins of a lot of that, and a lot of those later books that were called magic books are actually medieval, from the early Middle Ages on. So this is just really interesting how she goes back and lays the foundation for the Lilith myth to be interpreted in all those areas that I just talked about. And for some reason, like, Lilith is a controversial figure. In the 1990s, there was Lilith Fair, where all the female alternative artists had a festival, women's festival, that they would go around performing and stuff. I don't know if you guys even remember Lilith Fair if you're under the age of 35, but it was neat. I never went, but I had the CD compilation of it. So it's really difficult. It is a fine skill and art to be able to tie all that together, because I've studied this stuff since I was in my early 20s. I started out as a philosophy religion major and just moved to political science because I wanted to be involved in public administration and stuff like that. But hobby of mine, just a hobby, is reading stuff like this, like really appreciating people who do it well, because it's hard to remember all those old lost books and the lost knowledge and keep it all straight in your head, and to write a book where everything kind of coalesces and comes together very well is difficult. Now the character of Lilith is so believable. She is so believable because she's not like this hardcore like witchy woman. Like, I mean, she is, but that's just her nature. It's natural. It's not like, you know, like this. It's not like she's hardcore like a lot of pagans or witches or Wiccans try to make her out to be. She's a dark goddess in the fact that she's been defamed as a woman who just said no, and a woman who just didn't take shit. She just was like, nope, see ya, peace, and left. And that's just the way to do it. But women are demonized for leaving very, very, very abusive, toxic situations. I'm in Alabama. You were demonized. I've known women that have had to fight for kids when their husband was abusing them and their children, like physical, like straight up bruises and blood. So Lilith is a role model, whether you like her or not. The character, the archetype, the dark goddess, even from a secular viewpoint, she's just one of those figures that we look to, those archetypes. The whether you want to call it her a goddess or some sort of role model out there in the social zeitgeist since the 1990s, when Kabbalah really became popular. That was the thing. And I've studied Kabbalah too. And again, I don't want to sit here and do like a lecture and all that, but I just want to emphasize how well Nikki really brings this together. Like she just knocks it out of the park. Okay, it's difficult to take such an iconic figure, and that's not even beginning to cover like how important the concept of a dark goddess is, like that sort of archetype. How she takes probably the most defamed and discarded goddess that we have, like dark goddess, and she doesn't make her a trope. She doesn't make her like tropey. She doesn't make her like, you know, like a mainstream new agey ideal of something who's badass. She is badass, but she's just badass because that's just inherent to her character. She doesn't have to like act like a dude or act like a warrior princess or something. She just is. She just inherits. She just embodies that sort of inner strength, and that she is the symbol of autonomy. She is the personification of female autonomy, and that's why Lilith. I have cat hair all over me. Sorry. That's why Lilith is so important when you talk about mythologies and archetypes and legends and just forgotten lore that has been suppressed. And we know that conquerors write history. Also, a lot of the older deities were just revamped and added to the conqueror's pantheon. We see that with the Greeks and the Romans, right? You can interchange the name Zeus and Jupiter because they just took the Greek elements of Greek culture, most of it actually, and just fit it into their Roman Empire. And you do see that a lot. You see that today with the Catholic Church, how when they go in, they just sort of take local little genius loci, like little gods of the land, and they just sort of make them saints, and they're incorporating it into their pantheon, their mythology of Catholicism. And that's where you get a lot of saint magic, especially in Santeria. So this is such a good representation of an icon and a goddess. It starts out where she is in the garden, and then it, you know, the garden that people would recognize from Genesis or from the Zohar, the Torah, Kabbalah too. When everyone was into that 1990 stuff, remember that Madonna had the red string. So she starts out there, and she actually incorporates a lot of the hidden books or a lot of the apocrypha stuff, and she goes through the disintegration of Sumerian culture and then Babylonian culture and then on and on. And like there's little quotes from the Dead Sea Scrolls in here. I'm actually going to put on my glasses, and I know this is going to be another damn long book review, but look, I like to talk about this book, okay? So you're just going to have to deal with it. Yeah, so Dead Sea Scrolls of either excerpts or passages that could be attributed to Lilith. This is from the Dead Sea Scrolls. Her ways are of death, and her paths are paths of sin. She steps out toward Sheol. None who enter there will ever return, and all her successors shall sink into the pit. And there are lots of little controversies, you know, people who study antiquities, whether, you know, of passages about Lilith or about, you know, I don't know, whatever mythological female character, or just something that's just metaphorical. So, and there's a Genesis quote in here. Really, I mean, anyone could pick up this book and enjoy it. And it did come out in 2023. And I love the dedication here. For women everywhere, be your own gods. Your mother commands it. That is just, that's good. Oh, this is a Rossetti piece. And really, she was also like Lucifer, like a light bringer character. She was a light bringer character. Very much the Pre-Raphaelites, all the artists, they loved Lilith. She was often a theme of artists back during the Enlightenment age. She had a resurgence again, basically in the romantic period, Enlightenment, all throughout any time period where folklore and mythologies were really being celebrated. And we see kind of a rebirth, a resurgence of stuff. And those are usually subjects that tend to rise to the surface when the social zeitgeist, when the culture, when the era becomes more secular, and you don't have a lot of like religious authorities stamping it down. So during the Enlightenment, the Romantic poets, the Pre-Raphaelite artists, and I have a book over here on them, she was the female counterpart to Lucifer, and she includes this in here, how there is that sort of male and female duality of light bringers. And but of course, as usual, Lilith is the one who weathers a lot of the hardships, and she is unjustly and unfairly demonized. That's putting it mildly. Again, she has really interesting quotes from Genesis in here, if that's your thing. That's why I think this could be accessible to people who like Bible studies and concordances and just stuff like that. Like I can imagine like a Methodist really reading this book. Yeah, Methodist, Unitarian. Yeah, I would actually suggest it to my friends who are like into stuff like that. Like that's their belief system, because they're kind of on this kick to like bring back in the divine feminine anyway. And this is a book that would be really accessible to them as well. And I think if Misty was a reader, I have a friend whose dad was a Baptist minister. This is something that she would be interested in, because it does actually incorporate like a lot of Genesis stuff, and it's neat how she does that, and it's really neat. It's really neat. And of course, it is a story about female empowerment, and Lilith finally is redeemed. She comes out smelling like a rose. She never was any of the things that people put upon her, and there really has been this campaign of misogyny to blame women for everything, and women are basically second-class citizens at best in a lot of places still today. I'm in Alabama. There's a lot we could talk about there and unpack. But also, women kind of are the sin eaters of humanity. And that's not cool. It's not cool to be placed as a scapegoat because of Abrahamic religions, believing that women are, I don't know, whatever, carriers and whatnot, or Saint Augustine, I'm only saying that in quotes, okay, because that's what the Catholics call him, but Augustine and Thomas Aquinas believed that women were basically animals and soulless, and that the soul was carried by the male sperm, and just weird stuff like that. Like, where did they get that from? Because we know that's not true. It's not based in science. It's not based actually in anything observable. Definitely can't be tested by the scientific method. But yeah, Lilith is kind of the embodiment of basically womankind, and the one who carries that. She's the embodiment of the defamation of womankind, I would say, by patriarchal cultures and religions. And that's why this is so powerful. And she is a redeemed character in the end, because never before have I seen her actually be redeemed. And like I said, the way that in which Lilith is painted is very accessible. Like, it's believable. Even though she's a mythological character, she's a goddess. She's actually a goddess created by her mother goddess, Shekinah. But it also ties in Shekinah to the myth of Inanna, and how she's her daughter. And oh gosh, it's such a good book. Just read this book. I mean, if you're into this, even history majors would appreciate this, because the way she really tries to be accurate. And I'm gonna stop holding this up right now, and I'm going to actually show some other sources that if you want to, expand on this book with reference sources after you read this book, I'm going to show you some books that really tie in to a lot of the research that the author did. And they may actually be books that, see, she does have a list of sources in here. So let me just go through that. Okay. So sorry, I'm going to hold this book a little bit longer. So she talks about the characters, Lilith. This is the text that I kept blanking on. I was mind farting on hard. Alphabet of Ben Sura. And the first written account identifying Lilith as the first woman, equal woman, dates from the Alphabet of Ben Sura, and that's Common Era, 700, 1000 Common Era. So, and then Genesis, she has some from there, and the Hebrew myth. Let's see, Samael, she has a section. She goes Isharoth. That was the one I was forgetting about, because there's so much in my head right now thinking about this book. Isharoth is the Hebrew goddess, and she's one that I've studied as well. Back in my 20s, when I was really reading the Gnostic scriptures and into all of this, and studying the Cathars. And it talks about the cult of Isharoth, and intensified after the Babylonian destruction of Jerusalem in 587 BCE. So she has all the dates in here. If you're someone who really wants to know the sources, she has about Mesopotamian mythology, that would be Sumer. The high priestess, who actually, and there's a book on Amazon, the high priestess who wrote the first book of poetry, I think, written, was by a high priestess who wrote poetry to her goddess. And that's in Anna, and I'm about to get to a book on that in a second. God, I cannot imagine like how much. Oh, the Chokmah. Sophia is Greek from Chokmah. Jesus and Sophia, talking about that. It does get into the Magdalene a little bit. I have a girlfriend who's a witch, and she's all into Mary Magdalene. So Mary Magdalene shows up later on in here. Gnostic Gospels, for those of you who are into all that. She's got sources in here, and I went through and I highlighted so much. Eve's legacy. There's things from church fathers, Catholic dogmatic stuff, and she quotes the Malus Maleficarium, the hammers of witches. Oh, I don't know if I want to read that. I probably should. Okay, so this is how the myth of Lilith, the archetype, the goddess, the icon, the egregore, tulpa, thought form, whatever. People are using those words now. But let me just read this from the Malus Maleficarium, of how potent of a threat, how seriously men actually, the patriarchy actually reacted to women embodied by Lilith. For it is true that in the Old Testament the scriptures have much that is evil to say about women, and this is because of the first temptress, Eve. And it should be noted that there was a defect in the formation of the first woman, since she was formed from a bent rib, that is, a rib of the breast, which is bent as if it were in contrary direction to man. And since through this defect she is an imperfect animal, she always deceives. Now that's basically about Eve. Oh, Eve shows up in here too, which is really cool the way, because some people actually think that Lilith was the serpent in the garden, not Samael or Lucifer, who are usually the same person. I can't do like a little alternative history study here on forgotten and dead religions, but you guys get the picture. And I would say that Lilith and Eve, there's a duality there, like Madonna whore, but they're both fallen, right? Because there's no way you can ever be perfect. There's no perfect woman ever. People even attack Mother Mary, the figure of Mother Mary. I think that the spirit of Lilith is that bit in every woman that keeps her alive through really bad, dark times that only women usually go through. And once you put up a woman or women on a pedestal, they're always going to fall, because there is no way to attain perfection. And if you do ever come close to it, there's no way to maintain it. We see this Lilith spirit in a lot of female celebrities. Lilith, in a way, is kind of a siren figure as well. And we see that in how, for example, pop stars are demonized. We see it in the Madonna whore dichotomy. And Lilith is definitely on the whore side of that. Mother Mary would be on the Madonna. Even Lilith's own mother, Shekinah, would be Madonna. But she's ultimately hidden. Shekinah, the original spirit of creativity, is ultimately hidden and basically erased from history. And there has been this erasure of female spirit and autonomy. And no matter what sort of image or ideal of perfection that is created to be achieved by girls and women, it is also built into that idea, that perfect model, a defect, so you will fail. They set you up to fail. And they being dogma, Abrahamic religions, Catholicism, the patriarchy, all these things that we know to be very controlling and hostile to freedom and the pursuit of happiness. And so this book really just is really important, because in one sense it is, yes, it's just a really good read. Okay, it's just one of those books that you stay up with your little book nightlight and you read. It's one of those books that you put down on purpose because you don't want to finish it, because you know once it's over, it's gonna just really haunt you. So while you're reading it, you're also pulling out all these other books that you have. And it's getting dark because it is raining here. We're talking about Lilith. It's so appropriate. You pull out all these other books you have because you want to actually kind of go along with the author on her scholarly depiction of a fairy tale. And it is a fairy tale in the most legendary sense. And I hope I'm doing this book justice. I mean, it's been like, dang, 30 minutes here. Now, let me show you the other books. So that is the book review. If you could have just turned it off 10 minutes ago, but I want to show you the other books that I had pulled. And I'm going to pull out this one because I just remembered it. It's over here with my art books. Shekinah by Leonard Nimoy. Now, this is actually a picture book. This is, I found this on Abe Books, and it's gone really dark. I found this on Abe Books, and there are some beautiful pictures in here, but it's kind of like simulated nudity or hidden nudity. So I don't really want to show you too much, but I will show you that Leonard Nimoy wanted to capture the spirit of the feminine, the divine feminine. He was really into that later on in life. He got really mystical and into Kabbalah, and going back looking at the character of Shekinah, the goddess, the mother goddess of all. And there are so many, I mean, I can't show you that one. There are just so many beautiful pictures and sayings in here. There's a quote like from the Wisdom of Solomon, and let's see, where are some of these quotes from? The Art of Dwelling. So there's a lot of really cool, I'm trying to find something that spirit in the flesh. So, and he really does, she really does capture like the spirit of Shekinah and as embodiment in female form. It's just a beautiful book. It's probably good that it's dark. But yeah, so that was something that I got lucky and found it on Abe's Books for like $30, and usually it's not that cheap. So let's go move on to some other books. Inanna. This is a book, and I did cover this one. Remember, this was a book that I actually found at the book outlet. And I'm going to sneak over here and turn on light. I'm back. And I know it kind of blends in with the print. It's not very good print or design. But yeah, Queen of Heaven and Earth, Her Stories and Hymns from Sumer. So this is a collection of her mythology, her stories and hymns from Sumer. And Anna, this is the goddess often associated with Lilith. And sometimes she's kind of confused with Lilith. But, and there is a little bit of like argument going on with scholars and witches and, you know, women, spiritualists, feminist types, whether Lilith and Anna, they're the same goddess or they're different, whatever, decide for yourself. It doesn't matter to me really so much as, you know, the fact that we have these lovely, wonderful fragments, sometimes full hymns that we actually have that weren't destroyed, and that's great. Other academic books that get more into like goddesses, witches, mystics, and other airborne females when you're talking about the realm of air and metaphysical stuff. But you want an academic bent. You don't want to go to the New Age section and pull out something that someone channeled. This is actually an academic source, Women Who Fly by Serenity Young. And I found this book I actually got this book at the witch bookstore I go to. And it's the only witchcraft store for supplies and literature that I will ever recommend in the greater Birmingham area. It's called Ritual and Shelter. It's technically in Birmingham, but it's in old downtown Homewood. So it's in a historic district of Homewood. And I actually got this book from Ritual and Shelter. And it's by Oxford University Press. So this was so exciting to actually find in person because I tried to order it before and it was out. And I'm going to show you the table of contents because Lilith does in some versions have wings, have the ability to fly. She can be airborne. So that's how she supposedly, you know, there's a lot of weird mythology there that the patriarchy has kind of put on the character, especially the Catholic Church. Like they were really scared of Lilith in the Middle Ages. Like, but this is about female flight, heroines' freedom from captivity, transcendence, shape-shifting. That was the first part. And then there's Earth, Sky, Woman, and Immortality, Earth, Sky, Birds, Magical Flight. And remember, all this is written about basically goddesses, sexuality, and death, and immortality. It goes into Isis. It goes into, you know, it ties a lot of interesting things from the ancient world. Swan maidens, the fall of Valkyries, angels and fairies. And it goes into some of the yogini stuff from India. That's really interesting. And then it gets to human women, witches and succubi, male sexual fantasies, which I didn't want to go there and I'm not going to. Women shamans, flying mystics. And it's all a collection of basically just mythology, but also archetypal stuff from around the world. And the last chapter is nationalism, women, and heroism. So Wonder Woman, Amelia Earhart, stuff like that. So it's a really, really well done piece. I'll just show you the table of contents. Piece collection of various mythologies, and she even has a part in here about swan maidens, and she talks about Swan Lake. So, and I really enjoyed this because a lot of this is stuff that I would read about when I was in high school. I was one of those weird kids that liked Greek mythology and Celtic mythology and fairy tales. Fall of the Valkyries, just winged goddesses in general. The whole section on winged goddesses just is about their, where they're found in culture, the art, the supernatural elements, meaning the superstitions around the goddesses, what they represented within the culture. And here is one right here that is, and this is what people usually, when they think of Lilith, they actually see her as this, but this is the Bernie relief, and you've seen it. It's Queen of Night. And here it actually says winged Inanna/Ishtar. So Inanna and Ishtar are interchangeable, but you've seen that one. And that's where, Lilith kind of becomes conflated with Inanna and Ishtar. And supernatural women, that's an interesting part. But this is a meaty book. It's not a difficult read, but it's something that is academic. So do keep that in mind. But it's accessible. It's not like you can't understand it if you haven't been to grad school. You don't need a graduate degree to read this book. That's what I'm trying to say. So yeah, and Egyptian stuff, and it gets into Egypt a little bit there. There is a legend about Bubastis, where the Holy Family, after Jesus was born, they had to run over to Bubastis, which is what kind of city? This is a cat city. Basically, Bubastis is the city of Bastet. And she's one of mine, and I say her name every which way. I just call her Bast. And her sister Sekhmet. There were actually several cat deities, and there's a really good documentary that I'm bleeping on the name about Bast, and it's a historian who goes over and actually does a lot of research. I'm probably going to try to find it and link it below. But the feline powers of Egypt, they were called the Eyes of Ra. Two sisters, sometimes interchangeable. There's another goddess too, another feline goddess, and the name just flew out of my head. That it's kind of a triple aspect. But Bubastis, they actually have a museum about Bast at Bubastis today. I wish I could go, and I'll probably never be able to go. But that would be a dream, to go see a place like that. I wouldn't want to go see the pyramids. I want to go see Bubastis, like the ancient settlement there and that museum. That would be cool. So now this is one that I've shown before. It's Gnosis. And I got this book from the idea of buying this book. Thank you, John David, from the what is it, University of Chicago Press book sale. Apparently that happens annually. So he showed this on his channel, because I'll put on his videos, and then I'll put on the other one, Grape Jelly Library. She's on here too. And sometimes I'll just watch their videos just to see like what they're gonna hold up, because he does what I do. He kind of like holds up books and as whether he's read them or not, he talks about why he bought it and stuff. So, and I do that too. But it's apparently Gnosis was a matriarchal culture. It says pacifist and matriarchal, pagan and cosmic. So it was a culture that preceded what we think of when we think of Greek history, when we think of Western Civ. And the ruins were unearthed, I think, around World War I. So I'm going to be looking forward to reading this. I've not gotten into it yet. I did get it earlier this year. This is the one I haven't read. So I read the other three. Now, this is actually ancient Greece, a portrait of a priestess, women, and ritual in ancient Greece. Now, this is actually a textbook. So, and I ordered it because I found it for a good price. I saw it as used as a source, and I'm trying to remember which book it was in. I don't think it was, it may have been Lilith, but it's actually a textbook, or is listed as textbook. End of the line, The Coming of Christianity, chapter 9. Woo. Numerology, anybody? So, yeah, this is, we don't have a lot of information on a lot of priestesses or female spirituality because a lot of it was destroyed. It was purposefully destroyed, and by the desert terrorist that history calls the church fathers. A group of men that ran around calling themselves monks that basically sacked Alexandria, destroyed what we have of the ancient world, and it really was a darkening age. And that's the name of a book, A Darkening Age, that was recommended by Noam Chomsky on the Ralph Nader podcast. I think it was Ralph Nader, maybe it was just Noam Chomsky in another interview, but he recommended The Darkening Age. I think the author's last name is Nixie. Well researched about the death of ancient civilizations, but mainly the last blow came from the rise of what we know today as Catholic Church. And it is a book that actually uses historical fact and ruins and archaeology, anthropology to expose the fact that we've seen ISIS-like behavior before by other peoples. And that tends to just be a human problem that is found everywhere. This is the feminine power, the divine to the demonic, and it's from the British Museum. Apparently it was a show at the British Museum. I saw this on Abe's Books again, and I ordered it because my interest in art history comes from my love of art, which is very complicated. I was not an art major, obviously, ever, but did do a lot of oil painting and stuff. I went through a period where I just painted winged cats. And that was in the 90s, and everyone thought it was weird. Now you can Google winged cats. I have one framed right here by one of my favorite artists up above me, and you can Google winged cats, and they're everywhere. Everyone's painting winged cats, but I was such a weirdo back in the 90s because I did that. So this art book is basically about an exhibit of goddesses, ones that are considered divine and desirable, and others that are considered demonic. And I've shown it before, and I'm just rambling now, but Madonna and Child, but the cover is just frightening. I mean, if you astral travel, you've probably seen stuff like that, but ooh, I don't want that to slide off, so wrap it up, Amber. Okay, so yeah, I can't say enough good stuff about the book. These are sources, secondary sources, that if you want or care to expand on, some kind of knowledge, scholarly knowledge, like not just New Age stuff, about the time periods of history and the epochs through which historically the vast, because it's supposed to be at the creation, at the beginning of all. If you really want to look through that and look through the historical timeline, these are just the sources that I have on hand to give you. I don't really recommend, obviously, a lot of New Age stuff. I try to really keep it scholarly, but I also, because I no longer am in graduate school, I don't want to read anything really dry. So I try to recommend stuff that is accessible and that's fun. And on a rainy day like this, you can just make a cup of tea and sit there and flip through it. So I'm sorry this has gone on 45 minutes, but I had to give this book its due. It really deserves to be front and center. It is my favorite book of the year. I think it's going to be one of my favorite books of my life. That's pretty hardcore for me because I read a lot. I still have The Ghost Cat and Tail Chaser's Song from childhood. They were my favorite books from childhood. It's like every decade I have one or two favorite books that I just keep with me throughout my life. And I keep them in my bedroom. I like keep them by my bed. That's just me. That's part of my weird quirks as a person. And like a Christian would keep a Bible, I'll keep this one in here. And yeah, I hope she has another book. I haven't read it, and I really need to get her other book and read it. So I really do, because I bet it's awesome too. On the Wilder Seas. On the Wilder Seas. I think she does have a webpage. That's her press, or the press that published her book, Alcove. And yeah, I'm just going to end here because I'm going to just keep rambling and it's dark.